Hello and welcome to another anime lore and theory video. I'm Shergok, your host, and today we are going to take a closer look at why being an adventurer in a medieval fantasy world is a lot closer to selling your body in some other way. But before we're going to take a closer look at any of this, let me quickly thank my patrons for supporting this channel, as well as say thanks to all users of the YouTube thanks function for making one-time donations. And with that said, let's get to the topic at hand. Being an adventurer in a fantasy world would probably not be the most pleasant experience one could have. Sure, getting done by goblins, or falling into the hands of an undead overlord and being used as a nest for parasites is a danger that is not all that common, but generally speaking, while adventurers might be celebrated heroes, of whom the strongest and most talented could secure wealth, power and fame, the majority of adventurers would essentially be something like OnlyFans creators. Of course, some people can sell stale tap water in 50ml bottles for $20 and get rich from it, but the majority grinds away, with their entire body on the line, earning less than the average minimum wage. And that brings us to the main problem I want to get at. Just like in our own world, there are countless potential people that could do OnlyFans. Adventurers too only need to fulfill two criteria: have a young, fit and healthy body, and be adult. But only a tiny percentage of them will actually make it big. And in a medieval fantasy world, where first of all magic might ensure that all children reach adulthood rather than only 3 or 4, or half of it, and secondly, where there are likely things like love potion, charm spells, or other aphrodisiacs that actually would work, and thirdly, where there are probably no affordable methods of contraception to counter rising birth rates, the lives of one's own children would not be considered as valuable as they are in our own world. And life in generally would be pretty cheap. Whereas here in our own world, we have helicopter parents who treat their only kid like a lifelong project, showering it with attention, tutoring, extracurriculars, music lessons, and constant guidance to the point it becomes oppressive and annoying for everybody else. A father with 3 daughters and like 13 sons is probably not going to be all that strict about whether they go play in the Wolf Forest, the Death Cliff, or on the Storm Plains, and whether or not they come back. The resources of such a world would be greater than in our own medieval time, but still be limited. And deciding to have kids, or just realizing, oops, I pulled out too late, would not be all that rare. The results would be a massive surplus of births, and the most effective way to put that surplus to some kind of use for society would be the meat grinder. But in times of peace, this would only be the Adventurer Guild, meaning that an ample supply of young, fit adults would line up to basically throw their lives away. But in times of peace, there would be no other choice than the Adventurer Guild, and that's probably how most adventurers would be seen by society. As scum, as the lowest of the low, just barely above people without a home and without a job. Basically anyone who can't do anything but fight, or who ended up as an unwanted son, or simply just cost too much to feed, would end up in the Adventurer Guild. And what in Konosuba, for example, is portrayed as a meeting place for young, wild and energetic people, most likely would also be the same in a more realistic setting. And this is due to one very simple reason. The chance of adventurers growing old wouldn't be all that high. And by old we're talking about 30. And to make this world even more bleak and sinister, just as the potential superstates, Oceania, East Asia, and Eurasia dispose of their surplus population and resources through war, so too would humans on one side and goblins and ogres and other monsters on the other dispose of everyone who cannot be used in traditional social roles and cost more to feed than their life is actually worth. Of course, humans would rejoice when the Ogre Valley is conquered or the Goblin Swamp is cleared, and for a Goblin horde to capture an entire human city would be an insane jackpot. Imagine that. food, and shelter for almost an entire week. Unheard of in Goblin Society. But seriously, overall adventurer guilds would be nothing more than a human meat grinder, one that only the very few would survive for long and rise to power, fame, wealth, and public recognition, to the status of humanity's hero. And the reason they are always portrayed as so nice and glorious in fantasy worlds is, apart from sheer plot armor, also the fact that the protagonists arrive with overpowered weapons and items, or at the very least with some day-affected, death-riddled resurrection spell in their back pocket. Most fantasy and isekai stories are not really interested in showing the life of the average adventurer, their battles, their desires, their struggles, and their hardship, and of course their untimely end, so basically to deconstruct all of it. Instead, the focus is on following the hero's journey, who stands out from the masses and is likely overpowered at day one. And that's why we have such a distorted picture of an adventurer guild as an institution, and as how the life of the adventurer would be in a medieval fantasy world. Not to mention the fact that every state will always view an armed organization operating within its own territory with utmost suspicion. And with that said, now it's your turn. What are you thinking about the adventurer guild in anime and fantasy story settings? Do you think it would be as bleak and as hellish as I portrayed it in this very short and not entirely succinct video, or do you think that it would be, more in the line of traditional heroic adventurers going out and rescuing princesses, or at least the village next door? And while you type, I say thank you very much for watching, thanks to all of my Patreons for supporting this channel, and as usual, I say my special thanks to Ada Daddy Ada, ASK, Bad Guy Yee, Bad Burrito 316, Beezer, Ben C, Brandon S, Brandon D, Chrissy, Crowley 0221, Sia, Crystal Prime, Dead Slime, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Demon Xenomorph 1987, Devin Downen, Ding Dong, Din Pep, Dragonlord Placidus Saxophone, Duckwagon, Dunkler Krieger, Dystopia, Dystopia II, Enigmatic Unicorn, Feralchivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Marino, Hoss, Huster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, J. Morris, Chromius, Kyle R, Lee K. Long, Legendarius, Le Louche Britannia with a Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Loftrazor, Merowek, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, Nope, Oh Hell No, Normal Toad, O'Kill, Overlord General Gasper, Paddy Pentum, Personage, Ruru, Primus 11, Rhinomere, Q&A Caracos P, Shergox's Daddy, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Sir Axolotl, Super Tier Magic Batista Bomb, Supreme Cheese, Staris, Ted, Texas Deer, The Orc Warboss, Rocket Smasher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, Xenokai, and Sonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon on my next video.